Hey, 7th graders, Mr. Allard here talking about your Chapter 13 vocabulary. We're going to jump ahead a little bit in our lessons here and start talking about differences between the North and the South. But here we go. All right, so again, as per usual, we're not going to talk a lot about the front, just because you're use your OTAs, use your kind of background knowledge, picture or a one-word definition in the front. Now, the first three vocabulary words we're going to kind of talk together because they deal with the South, and then the bottom two vocabulary words we'll talk together because they deal with kind of the North. Okay, so when you are writing your vocabulary words this week, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for you to write any of your vocabulary words without these three, at least the first two. I think slavery and plantation kind of go hand in hand. All right. So for my vocabulary word, I may have slavery. I could use slaves. Either one of those will work. All right. My example, where is this typically happening? It's typically happening on the South, on plantations. And if we look at the definition for plantations, it's also going to mention cash crops. Okay, cash crops are going to be the big one that we are going to talk about is cotton. Before then, there had been tobacco, there had been rice, indigo, but by kind of the 1850s-ish, cotton had become king, and we'll kind of talk about that and reasons why that happened more in depth on as we get into this chapter. All right. Now, when we get down here, how do we kind of make these differences? Well, quite honestly, it's really just changing the perspective. All right. And again, remember, we're writing these as sentences. We're not, copy pasting. So now down here, we can just kind of change the perspective a bit and say plantations, what's our example, in the South, used slaves to grow cotton. All right, that would be a simple just change in that way. The cotton gin, we're going to talk about this more in depth as well. And again, we're getting a lot of this before, so as you get the ability to add details and things like that into this, feel free to do that. Will be our cotton gin. Now, this was an invention, and it was created by this guy named Eli Whitney. I don't want to go kind of too in depth, but what did this really do is this, by the time that this invention came, slavery in the South had kind of like plateaued. Like most people thought it was going to go down. But one of the big things that happened with the cotton gin is this created a demand for more slave labor. So you could say the cotton gin, more slaves in the South. Because now the issue, before the issue was cleaning the cotton. It took a long time to clean the cotton. We can put it in the gin, we can clean the cotton. One cotton gin can replace the same amount of work as 40 slaves hand cleaning cotton. So now you don't need as many slaves cleaning the cotton. You need 40 more slaves to pick the cotton to get to that cotton gin. And plantations didn't have just one cotton gin. They had hundreds of cotton gins. So you can see kind of how that would explain an increase in slavery in the South. So the cotton gin, more slaves in the South. You could, clean cotton faster. And you're going to hear this kind of, more, faster, and cheaper. That's going to be kind of the big thing of our next vocabulary term, which is going to be industrialization. Okay? Under the process of industrialization, this happened largely in the North. And again, we're going to kind of take one day on just the South, one day on just the North, and kind of talk about how those things kind of interchange, and then probably one day going through some documents, writing about it, etc. Okay? So, Industrialization, not really a fancy way you can change this. You can't really make it into industrial, you could, but let's just keep it simple. Okay? Happens in the north, all right? And it happens in factories. And one of the big reasons we're going to talk about why the North gets factories go way, way back to the beginning of the year. It was not easy to grow crops here. You had in the summer, like in New York, you could, but what would you do in the winter? What would you do in the fall? You don't have that long growing season, so it was a big thing to do with the geography. You had rivers that you could use to power mills and things like that. Later on, you could use them to produce electricity. You had port cities like New York and Philadelphia and Boston that could get all these materials and get them there, and these cities grew up all across the north. Why didn't that happen in the south? Because the south had the ability to grow crops year-round, so plantations grew there. It was really an issue of geography. So this kind of goes hand in hand with our industrialization, and we can kind of talk about, a little bit of a cause and effect here. We can kind of say, our vocabulary word is urbanization. What is our example? We can kind of say industrialization, getting those vocabulary words in there, right, was a cause why people moved to cities for jobs and factories. You are a person looking for a job in this time period. We're going to talk about this, lots of immigration happening. Where are those people going to go? They're going to go where they can get a job right away. You didn't have to speak English to run a machine. You could go there, you could learn that low skill job, you could work your way up. You could earn that money to bring your families over. People from the rural areas, those plantations, bigger farms, industrialization is happening there. They can't afford to buy that big equipment. They can move to the cities and find a job there as well. All right, hopefully that helps you out with your vocab foldable. Again, we're probably going to take 2 big chunks on this. So this vocabulary foldable probably will not be due until next week. Make sure that if you have any questions, you're hitting me up on Schoology. You can send me those sentences via message, and I will do my best to give you some pointers. All right. Till next time, 7th graders.